everybody. Welcome to PARAMERICAN RADIO. I am your host, Chad Kalick. With me to my left, my best friend, the man that puts the Mandinga, you know, he puts the rock and roll, he struts when we stroll. Justin, whole Frankenstein. I was trying to come up with something snappy for Justin. I just feel like he needs to have an intro, you know. Sometimes it rolls off the tongue. Sometimes you hit a brick wall, you know. And as always, hanging out with us, I said it earlier, he is the millennial voice of a laptop-carrying generation. The swipe writer himself, Steve Tinder Zilberman. How you doing, Steve?
Pretty good, man.
We have a very, very unique podcast this time around, and I'm really excited about it. So excited that we're not going to follow our usual kind of like schedule and our usual format, because I want to get as much time as I can with this individual. But before I say his name and introduce him, I got a question for you, Justin.
Yeah.
Have you ever just wanted to sit down with an attorney and just pick his brain, like not on the clock, right? Because really good attorneys can cost anywhere from $500 to $1,200 an hour, right?
Yeah, I think that's like a typical thing. It happens all the time. We have actually coffee with an attorney, and everybody's always like throwing questions because it's like freebies, right?
Sure.
It's like, well, you're a friend and you hang out in the group. What about this? What about this? What about
the bottom line is most people don't understand the law, period.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And especially when I watch documentaries that involve the law, two specifically, ring a bell, and we're going to be jumping into these cases today. One being the Making of a Murder, the Steve Avery documentary series on Netflix. If I could have watched that series with an attorney to the left of me, that would have been amazing. To just be like, well, what about that shit? Well, what about that shit? Why can't they just do that shit? You know what I mean? I always have so many questions about that. And also, we're going to jump into the Kurt Cobain case. And, there's a big conspiracy about him as well. And I just watched the Soaked in Bleach documentary. And again, I wish I had an attorney there with me so I can just go, why can't they just go after her right now? Why is no one doing this? Why aren't the police doing this? Well, today we are going to get that opportunity. We're going to get the opportunity to sit down with an attorney. His name is Ilia Usharovich. He is a criminal defense attorney that also studies and argues constitutional law all the way to the Supreme Court. He is a unique individual. I met him earlier today, and he has really impressed me. And he came to our attention through Steve. I asked Steve earlier, how did you meet Elia? And he said, oh, yeah, I stacked a bunch of cases, and he basically saved my life. I was wrongfully accused, and he got me out of it. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. With that being said, Elia, thank you so much for coming on. We hope you don't leave us with a bill at the end of this. If you do, you leave it to Zilberman. He's going to pay it. Tell us a little bit about yourself and tell us about the case that you represented him on.
Well, I practice law in Chicago. Occasionally I go pro hoc vice, where you'll practice in other jurisdictions. They'll let you go to other states and try things out. In Illinois, I had a statute stricken unconstitutional. It was the excessive speeding statute. The punishment for that was there was a denial of second chance probation, or not in a sense probation, but where you plead guilty. If you're a good boy, the case goes away, right? Mm-hmm. And they denied that in those speeding cases, but they would allow it in reckless driving cases and DUI cases, which made no sense to me because, I could drive drunk, crash into a school bus, get supervision, which is that second chance that they give you on the DUI, on the crash, but not on the speeding. And the judge bought it. Got a case in the United States Supreme Court in international child abduction where they just ordered a response on the petition for cert. That very rarely happens. I mean, they take less than 2 to 3% sometimes, depending on the years, but of cases. So I practice constitutional law, just try to help people make the world a better place, which I find it in.
Now, something I heard that was really interesting is you are kind of like a roaming attorney. Like you don't you don't advertise your practice or anything, or do you?
No, I don't advertise. I mean, I don't run ads. I don't do anything like that. It's just my personal belief, which doesn't mean it's necessarily true, but it is my personal belief that I think that God gives me work to get done because maybe He trusts that I'll do the work. But
Wow.
I get good people in bad circumstances. I don't really represent bad guys. You know, I get kids get caught with drugs, and they have a future ahead of them. I don't get rapists. I don't have any of those sex cases. And a lot of times I also challenge the government. You know, we had the city of Chicago was issuing tickets, illegally enforcing them, and we filed a federal class action, and we argued it. I argued it along with Governor Blagojevich's lawyer, Sheldon Sorowski.
Blago.
Yeah, that's yeah.
And you get quiet when I bring up blogger, like, it is what it is.
Well,
yeah.
it's just that's a whole different ballgame, because how is it that initially, let's just talk about if it was like a car thief case. So he was convicted of stealing 26 cars. Let's just say that, right?
Right.
And on appeal, the appellate court said, well, 20 of those cars you didn't steal. You know, there were not good convictions. So the initial sentence that was given to him was 14 years based on stealing 26 cars. Doesn't it make sense that you get some type of reduction if the appellate court comes back and says, well, you know, technically 20 of those cars weren't stolen? And
It makes sense, right?
Yeah.
Sure.
So you could, if you were punished for 26 counts or 26 convictions, it should come back where if 20 of them are reversed, you get some type of sentence reduction. And again, there's guys that kill people and get less time sometimes than what Blagojevich did. And I don't think he really did anything but just talk about something. But that's a whole different story. But we challenged the city. We got rid of those enforcements in administrative courts. And now, you know, they're enforcing them, but the right way. So a lot of the things we do is just try to help and make the world a better place than what you found it. Because realistically, a lawyer has the ability to push the buttons of government. And what I mean by that is, with my little MacBook and a library online, I can go ahead and draft up some papers that changes the way the entire course of the world works. You know, and some lawyers have done that. You have nowhere in the Constitution does it say abortion. You can't find that word in there. Right. But some lawyer came up with it, wrote it up, and in the Fourth Amendment, they found that there's this right to privacy that everyone has, which encompasses this idea of abortion, the right to your own bodily integrity. And there's a lot of things in the Constitution that really aren't there, but the lawyers have managed to go ahead and take steps forward to help.
Before we go into some of these other topics, it's funny. So I'm staying over at Steve's. Ilia comes in this morning. I can hear his loud. He's got a loud voice, booming, waking me up and stuff in the place. And you're pretty much operating on zero sleep, right?
Yeah, that's why I got the shades on. What happened was I happened to be a fan of like fireworks and Chinese, all sorts of cultures, right? And I didn't want to really leave the country to go celebrate the Chinese New Year, which was just this Friday. And America's such a place that you can go anywhere and get any culture. And so if I want to go to China, obviously I'm going to go to San Francisco. That's one of the biggest Chinatowns there is. And so when I got to San Francisco on Friday evening, I called Steve. I let him know that I was in town because he's always in LA or wherever he is, in California, Australia, wherever you guys go. He's always somewhere. But I know he's in LA. And Steve found out I was here, and you know, I guess you guys spoke, and he invited me over to a show, and I said, sure, why not? I mean, apparently I've been up about 24 hours for the past time, not because of anything. I just drank so much tea there at these tea houses. I got so caffeinated, and then I spent literally 2 days lighting fireworks. Now, after I lit all these fireworks, I realized I wanted to look, well, why is everyone in Chinatown lighting fireworks? And apparently there used to be some monster, some goblin in their fortune or history that would come in and eat the villagers and destroy the towns. Right. And so lighting the fireworks scares away those ghosts or those scary spirits.
Yeah, there's a lot of legend and lore that it relates to fireworks scaring away monsters that hurt the children at night, essentially.
Right. And to bring in good luck or whatever. So, I mean, what a way. I spent 2 days scaring off the ghosts and the spirits, and then I end up on a paranormal blog. I mean, a podcast.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what. Why don't you, before we get into these like big cases that everybody kind of knows about, that I'm sure our public wants to ask a lot of the questions we're about to ask you, but talk to me about Steve's case. So he was. What was the crime, and how did you get the charge against him lifted?
Steve had an interesting case. Steve was driving a car, and he wasn't drunk. There was nothing wrong with him, and he lost control of the car literally about 2 blocks, like a block away from his house, and he hit a tree. So
were you drunk, Steve? Be honest with me.
No. I wasn't. No, I wasn't high. I wasn't drunk. It was really late. I just got off work, And
you only do blow when you're in Medellin, right?
yeah, only in Medellin. Definitely not when I was 18, 17, 16.
Okay, so Steve's clean. Okay, go on.
Steve's clean. Now, to this day, I'm going to tell you like this. I'll tell you my theory on the case. I thought that someone else crashed the car, and Steve was the only sober one that took the case. Because the
So
officer,
you thought he was like chivalry, like he was like, I'll take it for you guys, like, and someone else is in the car.
I thought his mom crashed the car and ran in and then
really?
like got him. Yeah, that was my actual theory. And I tell him that all the time. And he swears to me up and down it was him that crashed the car. But the story
Steve,
never added up because
your mom? Was it your mom?
No,
Steve.
It was.
You can tell me right now.
Seriously, guys, it was really me. I don't know where he got this from.
So
Wishful
apparently,
thinking by your attorney.
so they call an ambulance, and apparently Steve is in the ambulance, and the police officer comes in to the ambulance, starts talking to him.
You forgot to say I was rollerblading around.
Oh yeah, that's right. That's the part where I thought his mother crashed. That's one of the main reasons. When the officer and everyone arrives on scene, Steve, I guess, went to his house after he crashed the car, put on his rollerblades, and like rollerbladed back in the middle of the night. What time is it? Like 2 in the morning?
Oh, 3, 4.
3, 4 in the morning. He crashes his car, hits a tree, goes home, leaves the car there, puts on his rollerblades, and rollerblades back to the car. And he's rollerblading around. That's why I thought, that someone else crashed the car. Because, that doesn't make any absolute sense.
And how old was Steve at this time?
16, 17, something like that.
No, you were an adult. You were for
18?
sure. You were 18, yeah, because it was an adult felony court.
Okay.
Dismissed, right?
Yeah, it was an adult felony court. And so Steve gets in the ambulance, and the officer then comes in. So at some point, they called an ambulance, and they want to check Steve out. Because, he literally wrapped his car around the tree. I think the car was totaled, too. And he's lucky to be alive because...
Did you get hurt at all?
No, they said I was really lucky.
How fast were you going when you hit the tree?
Too fast, man. I want to say 30 or something.
Wow.
And it was 30 around
no
a corner.
break?
No, it was around a corner.
So you never got a chance to brake for you. You hit it flush.
Yeah, exactly. I was younger. I wasn't as experienced driving, and I turned too wide.
Wow.
And so he crashed, he hits his tree, and the police come, and they call an ambulance. Somehow Steve is in the ambulance. The officer comes into the ambulance and says, do you have your ID, insurance, starts asking him questions. Steve says it's in the car. The officer goes in the car and searches the car and finds Steve's driver's license and then finds the driver's license of some other guy who's 21 or 22. Under the driver side or passenger side?
it was in the back. It was in the back right even, and my ID was not with the other person's ID.
Right. Steve's ID was actually in his glove compartment or wherever it was, and the ID that belongs to the other guy was on the floor mat, either in the front or in the back, as if it slid. When you hit something, everything that would be moving inertia, it kind of it will slide forward or backwards once the vehicle stops. Kind of like the seatbelt, it'll keep you in your seat. And so they then charge Steve with possession of a fraudulent identification card, which is a felony.
Wow.
And so they arrest Steve, and they go to court, and the officer, and when you get arrested in Illinois, or you get arrested generally, the United States Supreme Court says you have to have a probable cause hearing, where an officer presents some testimony or a report is presented to the judge to determine if there's probable cause to commit a crime, or that the person, the accused, committed a crime.
I have a question. I mean, it's not the story. I'm just asking questions. So they find this alternate ID that's in the car. Steve, whose ID is it?
Well, it was someone else's. I don't know.
Did it look like you with someone else's name? Was it a fake?
It could have been used as a fake.
So
I never.
You're not going to get double jeopardy. I'm asking you, was it a fake ID?
Steve, the statute of limitations is expired. You're completely fine.
Okay, you want to know?
Well, I just would like to know. I mean, so it was your fake, right?
So
I might not want to know. But,
Okay.
But go ahead.
In order to film in clubs, you have to be 21, and I used.
So you use it to
film.
work and film. Okay. That's what I wanted to clear up, Steve. Okay.
I may use it once or twice for something else to help friends out, maybe, but...
Okay. I'm sorry. I just had a question, Elia. I'm sorry. Please continue.
Right.
Gotcha.
But the thing is that the crime that using and possessing a fraudulent ID and versus a counterfeit ID versus someone else's ID. And that was the main issue in his case, because the license that they found was a real license with a Secretary of State number issued to it.
Yeah.
So it wasn't a fraudulent identification card. It was a real ID. Right. He was just using it he had it in his car, but not in his physical possession.
Right.
So when the officer went before the judge, he tells the judge that, now here's the interesting part. In the police report and in the narrative to the judge, the officer tells the judge, we called and contacted the Secretary of State. We confirmed and ran it that this is a real license. They ran the number through the computer. So if it's assigned a number and it's all real information,
right,
it can't be a fraudulent ID. And it's a misdemeanor for possession or for showing someone else's ID. It's a misdemeanor for kids
and what did you
under
do?
21.
Was it someone who just looks like you, or did you actually go through the line with paperwork and actually get a different ID?
No, actually, it was for what one of my internet friends gave it to me.
He just looks like you.
I think he looked similar enough to me.
I'm saying it was his ID, though.
Right.
You did not have a fake photo of you in here.
No.
Now this makes sense to me.
Right.
I see what you're saying. You're going, yo, this ain't a fake ID.
Right.
It's a real ID.
Right.
It's just in his car.
Right. The statutory
Gotcha.
definition of a counterfeit or fraudulent identification
Right.
is a document purporting to be a driver's license without an actual number issued to it by a
Right.
government agency.
Right.
Here, this was a real thing.
Yeah.
They ran it through the computer. They called the guy and talked to him.
Yeah.
And when he goes before the judge, he tells the judge these facts. These are the facts that I'm telling you that are being told to the judge. And the judge finds probable cause. And this poor kid, he's never been in jail. He's a good kid. I mean, you look at him, he might be...
Obviously, we support him. Absolutely. He's a good guy.
And he might be a screwball or something.
He's a little bit of a fuck up. He is.
Yeah, one man's vulgarity is another man's lyrics, so we get this curse. But yeah, I could say he's a fuck up sometimes, but he's a great fuck up. It's like
Indeed. He don't belong in jail.
the judge sets a bond on him and keeps him there overnight. Right? Would you stay overnight?
Yeah.
Yeah, he
Were
stays
you
there all
scared?
overnight.
Was it county? Or just like a local cell lockup?
Yeah, it wasn't.
Were you scared though?
No, I wasn't scared. I was really, really upset though. I was pissed off. I thought the entire time I didn't deserve to be there. I just totaled my car. I was more worried about what my mom was gonna say than being in the jail cell. I could care less about the cell.
So between the officer and the court, then were they stating the facts as they lied? Meaning, was it that the officer said we found this ID in the car?
Right. The officer just made a mistake. Yeah, he told the truth. We found this ID. We ran it. This is the numbers. It's a real ID. All the facts I just told you.
Yeah.
And the judge found probable cause.
What's so whack about it, I don't understand, is he got in an accident and he's sober, nothing's on him. So an ID in the car of somebody else's means you're a fucking criminal with a fake ID? That's whack. It's whack. What was the reason for the probable cause? Just that he had an ID that wasn't his?
The officer was a dick.
No, the probable cause to search the car wasn't an issue, because when he was in the ambulance, Steve consented to him to get his driver's license out and search the car.
Yeah.
He just saw it on the floorboard. The probable cause is the question the judge determines and says, is there enough evidence to show you just need a scintilla of evidence to show that this individual committed this crime to proceed forward. And they get up there, they tell him all the facts, and the judge basically just rubber stamped the guy. It says, here you go. And this is a little kid with a future.
Yeah.
We're not talking about a 45-year-old man who still has a future, but we're talking about a young man who's trying to live his life, who now has an FBI number issued to him, fingerprints in the database, and a record of being charged of a crime of moral turpitude, fraudulent ID. The ID was real. It didn't fit the statutory definition.
What's an FBI number? What's that?
Every time you get arrested, there's a state criminal index and there's a federal criminal index. And so every time you get arrested and fingerprinted, they assign you an FBI number. And so it's a database, right? Now here's the crazy,
I've never been arrested.
Here's the scariest part about it. Generally, you can erase your state numbers that they assign you and get rid of things, expunge them, but you can't do anything about the federal.
Right. We just ran into this with my son too. Yeah.
Yeah, it's scary, and people become prisoners of their own background for the rest of their lives. Despite the amount of good that they do in life, or despite whether they change or become great people, they're stigmatized for the rest of their life.
Well, I've always felt that is the worst thing. I know there have been different legal teams that have proposed this, but I'm a huge advocate for the idea that if you serve your term, the day you walk out of that prison, that felony should be expunged off your record, because that stamp stops you from ever entering society as a normal person again. Once you're a felon, you're a felon. There's so much shit that you don't have. You can't even go to other countries. You can't go to Canada. Can't go to the UK. So many jobs you can't get. You know
I had
what
trouble getting into Canada because of this.
Of course, absolutely. We go there all the time. And I had the first time we were touring Canada, I heard this, that if you have a felony, I mean, dude, I had to like go over my past shit and go, man, what did I get busted for? Because remember in Iowa State when I had that contempt of court, I was like, was that a felony? I don't know what that was.
I mean, for the papers.
What did you do to get contempt of court? You got to tell me what you did. Or what you were accused of doing. I'm sorry.
No, I had a parking ticket. They showed up. I was gone. My roommate signed for it. So then they set a court date. I didn't sign it, so I didn't know what was going on. So then when I didn't show up, they put out contempt of court for me. Okay, so I'm supposed to show up they say, yeah, you're in contempt of court. You have another date now. You have to come in and turn yourself in. So I, basically came in, turned myself in, and said I'm here to pay whatever fine, whatever. And they threw me in jail for like 2 hours and made me wait in a cage. And I'm like, guys, I turned myself in. First off, why'd you handcuff me to walk me 2 rooms to put me in they literally did click 2 hallways, click, do it, put me in the cell for 2 hours. And then I went upstairs and I yelled at the judge and went off on him, and they threw me back in the clinker for about 6 hours, and they finally let me go, and I just paid, they like tripled my fee, you know what I mean? It went from like $80 to like $380.
Well, that was because you probably just told the judge how you felt. Yeah.
Well, I just told him what happened. I said, how the fuck can you say this is contempt of court when the signature that you have isn't even mine? I didn't sign that. And he was going, well, I have a signature right here. I'm like, I didn't sign it. You could look and you could see that it was, what was Brian's friend Bob Whitus? It was Brian's roommate, Bob Whitus.
Yeah. Oh, really?
Yeah, which I had him come and say, I signed it. That's my thing there. And they were like, well, why'd you sign for Chet? He's like, I know the police officer told me to sign it and to let my roommate know.
Yeah, and if you don't follow an officer's order, you get another ticket for failing to follow an officer's
but without
command.
my signature, they didn't properly serve me.
Right, so you have no notice, no due process.
Right, exactly. Right. So I could have got out of all of it with a little bit of embarrassment and a $69 fine. But yeah, I got lippy with them, so it was $380, and then they just kept me in jail for about 8 hours.
What was that movie where he asked him? Remember that guy? He punched the warden. What was that? Was it Shawshank Redemption? And he's like, did it feel good punching the warden? Because he got like 20 years after that, and he said, you bet it did, right? Yeah. Did it feel good telling the judge how you felt?
No, well, I've done it twice now, yeah. No, it felt really good. Okay. There was one time in Omaha, I got it for a DUI, or not DUI, a minor possession, when it wasn't my beer. I was the only one that didn't drink, and they brought like 7 of us in, and I literally, I watched the kid in front of me he had an attorney. We didn't. The kid had like 5 grams of coke on him and some weed, and he got like 20 hours of community service, like $100 fine. We go up there. I took the breathalyzer. I legally showed up as having alcohol, but it was below the limit of being drunk. So they couldn't have even, they had stopped. So they tried to say that I should get distributing because it was my hotel room and somebody else brought beer. So they were saying that I should get, basically distribution of alcohol. And I was like, well, how is that possible? So just anybody could walk in my room. You know what I mean? So basically when it was done, what I did is I just told the judge, I said, this is fucking bullshit, because had I just hired a lawyer, I would have got off this whole thing. So that guy has a lawyer, and he's got 6 grams of coke, and he's got and he gets nothing. So you're telling me I would have been better off to save the beer and do some blow, and then hire a coke, and I'd get a better sentence.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And he threw the book at me. I was almost $1,000 in fines, 80 hours of community service, and I got to walk out of there, but I never paid shit, and I stayed out in Nebraska for over 7 years because that was the length of the
I think everybody at some point through college is going to have some small run-in.
Statute of limitations?
When you're in a college town and you go in at the morning of the court, they always set it at like 6 a.m. or something to go in and do your... I got caught for public urination, right? I was taking a piss. I didn't want to go inside the McDonald's. So all my buddies from Omaha have beer in the van, and some were underage. So I I didn't want to run this. It was I was not a mall cop, but the security guy from McDonald's. I'm sitting taking a piss, and all of a sudden somebody grabbed me, and I thought it was one of my friends, and I'm like that, and I look, and it's this guy in a officer suit, and he starts taking me, and I'm like, put my dick in my pants. I'm like, what the hell's going on here? He walks me in the McDonald's. We sit down, and I'm just sitting next to him, and we're waiting for the cops to show up. And I think he started feeling like that was kind of a dick move, you know? And he's like, why'd you have to piss outside like that? And I'm like, I just had to go to the bathroom, and we were leaving to go do something else. And so anyway, the cops show up. I didn't know my zipper's still down. And it's a female cop, and they're at
great.
So they pull up right next to me, and there's a female cop driving and the male cop, and the whole time she's talking to me like this. She's like, "So what are you doing? What do you think you're doing back there?" And all stuff. And she's going like this the whole time, and I'm noticing, oh shit, my zipper's down. Nothing's out. Just down, and she was probably scanning up and down, and I'm like, you know what? I grew up on a farm. I'm just used to taking a piss outside. I guess I didn't. And she goes, I guess that's what we did. And she goes, well, that's not what normal people do. And the male cop's going, dude, I gotcha. I like I used to do that. Yeah, like he understands.
You know what that's called? The code for when you get busted pissing outside?
311,
311. It's a 311. It's an indecent code for pissing. That's how 311 got their band name. Nick Hexum got busted for pissing outside.
You know what's funny? They changed so it went from public urination, that's what they said. Everybody went, minor under possession, minor whatever, and all these hot chicks are in the court the next day, dressed up like we're still at the bar. It felt like the bar just moved to the court, the courthouse. And they asked Justin Holstein, public urination. Ha 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 through the whole thing, and I have to go guilty, and it moves along, sentencing, fine, etc. Right? They changed that 3 months later to third-degree sexual misconduct.
Exactly, that's what I was going to get to. Yeah. Now if you go to the restroom, you can end up being in the street, you can end up being a sex offender for the rest of your life and having to register.
Crazy.
Yeah, but how many? They change and. Over-criminalization is like a plague now. I mean, they've gone to such a level of just making everything so criminal that what you said earlier, there's one thing I do have to correct. Generally, if they issue a warrant or start the prosecution, there is no statute of limitations. Some cities, some jurisdictions have different, rules, and they can set different rules. I don't know which.
It was a bench warrant, is what it was. It was just they're not. Put it this way, they're not going to go out and look for me. But if I get pulled over anywhere, I'm going in.
And sometimes they issue warrants that are only county. In that one county because it costs too much money to.
This was a county warrant,
right?
Yeah.
So say you're in like the south of Illinois, the furthest southern county, but the warrant's up in the furthest northern county.
Yeah.
So they won't arrest you outside that county because it'll cost too much money to bring you there. Those things. But going back to what you said about the criminalization, like yours, and everything is automated now too. So the moment you fill out, most job applications are online, right?
Yeah.
The moment you fill out an application, it asks you, have you ever been arrested, right? And you check yes, the algorithm kicks you all the way out. You're done for. Your application is like that guy that doesn't want you to work there that buries it all the way in the bottom. No one gets to it.
That sucks.
It's a scary thing.
Look, I have a completely clean record, but I just think it sucks for mankind. And I was fortunate. You know what I mean? I did all kinds of stupid shit that I should be busted for. Got away with it. I was lucky. But yeah, when I meet somebody like Steve, who's a totally nice guy, well, you've been in fights, man. You've been in that. You haven't got hit with the felony, but it could have. You know what I mean? Very easily.
If you weren't there at that next case show, that would have turned bad. Yeah. I know it would have.
Yeah, big time. Yeah, there was. We're going to tell the story at some point on this show, but yeah, Justin. I said it's the greatest rock and roll story, but Justin was in a fight, and to say that he assaulted a man would be an understatement. And it was one who had it coming. I will tell you this. So we'll get back to that. Look, having said that, I feel like we've got to know you a little bit. And Steve obviously swears by you took care of a boy, which is awesome.
His story's worse. I didn't even get to the best part about it.
Give me the best part.
Yeah. So I come into court. Now, the preliminary hearing is done when the officer presents the judge for bond, to set bond. Right. There's no really lawyer there usually. He got a public defender, or he was just there. They give you a public defender. I don't think I was there for that date. So I get the case afterwards. I take a look at it, and I notice all those facts. I also go back. I have a strategy that I learned that works really well, I think, in any type of legal situation. The way you first go is you need to look at the law. that applies. So if it's a criminal case, you look at its charged, and you want to look at its birth. Where did it come from? Right. So you get the legislative transcripts of what they talked about when they were passing it. Then you look at the codification of it, and you make sure it matches up and everything's to the T. Then you analyze that law against the Constitution and see if it violates any of our fundamental principles that we hold as fundamental to our sense of traditional liberty and justice. And you look at all the concepts that are there. If the law is bad, you knock it out, right? Which is what I did with the speeding law, or at least tried to. If the law is no good, you got to look at the facts. And if the facts are in your favor, right, you try the case.
Right.
And you go and you get the not guilty, you jury it, you bench it. The difference is a jury is 12 people, a bench, the judge decides it. And if it's no good facts and the law is good, you got to plead the guy guilty. You just have to. Otherwise, he's going to get slammed for going to trial and wasting everyone's time. And you also don't want to be that lawyer that tries cases that are losers and wastes the entire judiciary system on a case that shouldn't have gone to trial, that the better and should have been pled out. Right?
Is there a lot of that happens where someone's just all heart? They just kind of fall in love with the guy or the girl, and they know they can't win, and they're just like, well, let's just roll the dice. Let's just see. Or are most attorneys pretty realistic about it?
No, most attorneys are pretty realistic about it. It becomes usually it's a stubborn defendant. A guy and this doesn't happen so much with private lawyers. It happens more with public defenders because they don't have a choice. They kind of get assigned, and if the guy's a knucklehead and he says no, I'm going to trial. Right, you're fired. I'll do it pro se, whatever. Yeah. But it usually happens with public defenders and those clients. And sometimes you see it with a guy who's super guilty, knows he's going to get 100 years and just wants to, roll the dice because it's such an egregious punishment. He's got nothing to lose. Right, if he pleads guilty, he's getting life. So what's the point? Just take it to trial anyways. But I come in for the hearing. I do the research. I look at the law. Guess what? The law wasn't codified properly. They were punishing kids for felonies when the possession of someone else's ID and the presentation of it is a Class A misdemeanor, but here was the kicker. If you sell a fake ID, right, it's a Class B misdemeanor. So selling a fake ID is less of a punishment than actually possessing it and using it, which makes absolutely no sense. You see what I'm saying? Yeah. So if I'm a drug dealer, in a sense, and I got whatever, coke, blow, whatever drugs you want, right, I get more trouble for having them than for selling them. Yeah. And that made no sense to me. Right. So I challenged it constitutionally. There was a case, People v. McGee or something. I don't remember it off the hands. I challenged it on that part. The second part that we challenged was the fact that it was a real ID, and we attached the report. So I bring this to the prosecutor at the preliminary hearing, and I explain it to her, and she doesn't care. She says, I don't care. Here's your offer. She wants him to plead guilty to crazy drug test. This guy loved to smoke pot, right, at the time. Right? Yeah. Am I right? Yeah. He loved pot. And he was cool with everything, and he was like, fine, I'll plead, whatever. And
so his prosecutor said, I don't care.
Yeah, his prosecutor didn't care. She didn't even care the fact that I'm showing you don't have a felony case here, and you don't even have the other case because it's not in his possession. Yeah. It wasn't in his pocket. He didn't make a statement. He didn't admit anything to the police. So there's no proof. You got to prove exclusive access to the area where it's found, immediate access, which means you can immediately grab it, right, and knowledge.
And when you say immediately grab it, it's got to be, if you're driving, it's got to be within the reach of...
Yeah, right.
Okay, wow. Right. So they actually take that into account.
Yeah, there's three. Okay. In a possession case, there's two types of possessions. There's actual and constructive. And I'll show you a big... Here, let's just say all four of us live together, right?
Right.
And the police are looking for salami sandwiches. They get a warrant, and salami sandwiches are illegal, and they kick in your door, and they round us all up. They look through the whole house, and they find nothing, right?
Right.
But then they get Tinder Steve, and what do? They search him, and they find there's this fridge in the basement with a lock on it, right? Okay?
Right.
So on Steve's underwear, they find the key. So they take us all downstairs in front of this fridge. They open up, they put the key in the lock. They open it up. Guess what's inside? Fucking salami sandwiches. So guess who's going to jail? Not you, and not me. You know why? We don't have exclusive access to it because Steve is the only one that can turn the key and put it in and out, right?
Right.
So Steve goes to jail. That's exclusive access, right?
Gotcha. Okay.
Now, knowledge, right, means you knew it was there.
Right.
Knowledge is presumed because he has the keys, the only one that can go in and out. So that's a constructive possession case because it's not on his pocket, right? So it's like a car, like a scale. The farther the drugs are away from you, the faster it goes, So if they're somewhere else or the contraband, it's there. But there's three prongs they have to prove. Now, if there wasn't a lock on the door, right?
Right.
They can't prove exclusive control because all of us can go in and put whatever we want in and out of it, right? So she couldn't prove this case, and I told her that, and it's not a real thing. She didn't care. She offers this kid some community service, something else, and then drug tests. When I told him drug tests, his face dropped. Not because it's not that he was upset about it. He just realized that, like, for the next year, I can't smoke pot.
Yeah.
You know, and he was really upset about it at that time in his life. Now he's grown up. He's a little bit different. You know, he's, you know.
He's a good kid.
Yeah, he's a good kid.
Yeah.
And like you said, everybody has done something in their
Of
life.
course.
You're not human if you
Of course.
didn't. You know, it's just, and the scariest thing is the people with the cleanest records are the most dangerous.
Right,
So
right.
Zilberman, so we go back and forth. I then file my motion, like a 100-page motion. He still got it. I attacked the prosecutor, said she violated her duties because she knows there's evidence that he's innocent. She keeps prosecuting him. I warned her. I put in about the law. I put in what the cop did wrong. And we come to court on the hearing. He got indicted, by the way. We never had a preliminary hearing. So here's what an indictment means that the judge, they send it before a grand jury without anybody there, show the evidence, and basically they can say the ham sandwich did it, and a jury will say, ham sandwich indicted, you know, because the prosecutor can control the jury that way because there's no one around to keep them checks and balances. It's just him and 12 people who want to go home.
Basically, indicted is like shit just got real.
Yeah,
like,
shit got, you're
charged.
proceeding. Yeah, you're upstairs.
Yeah, right,
they
yeah,
shipped
yeah.
them upstairs to where the felony
That's what I've
judges
always
are.
heard, that like
Yeah.
shit ain't real until you hear you're indicted. At that point, shit's real.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So we come in on the hearing on the motion. They dismiss the indictment, right? And then they re-indict him for some other crime, and then dismiss that indictment and say, "Have a nice day."
So were they trying to protect somebody? Like, why would they do that?
I think the second indictment was to show that the officer had some probable cause,
Right.
so that there wasn't a malicious prosecution lawsuit or a 1983 civil rights lawsuit against them. But you know, Steve had to suffer for this. He sat in jail for this. He went to court. He had to hire a lawyer. Now, I didn't take a huge fee. I think I did it all for $600.
Man, that's crazy.
Yeah, the paper all, because I felt so bad for the kid, and the mother was just his mom. I mean, forget the kid. Like, the mother's heart was distraught that this kid just crashed the car and they threw a felony on him. He's in the system now. She's freaking out, thinking he's going to prison because it was like a class 3 or a class 4. It's just, and so that's how I met Steve. And ever since that day, we've been buddies.
Oh, that's awesome, man. Well, listen, I could sit here all day and listen to you talk about cases, but there's two specifically that I know our listeners and Justin and I want to get into. The Making the Murder case, also the Kurt Cobain case. We're going to take a commercial break, and we will be right back with Elia on PARAMERICAN Radio.
PARAMERICAN Radio will be right back after this commercial break with even more dope-ass shit.
In a distant land where magic is as real as the rainbow, in a place where nature exceeds imagination, a paranormal investigative team led by a man named Craig Powell has captured something on film, something that will change the world. I have seen Sir No Face, and soon you will too.
Director of Sir No Face. So the next few weeks we'll be announcing 2 brand new screening events for Sir No Face. To find out what cities we'll be coming to, visit aghtelevision.com and check out our live events and touring page. Thanks so much for your support, and we'll see you soon.
And we are back, everybody. Fascinating podcast thus far. You know, Elia, what's really cool about what you do, and I like what you said earlier, you kept saying, you're pointing out that Steve's a good guy. That he's, got this, he's a professional now, he's a good kid, and you help this kid kind of get off. Because there's a lot of people that look at defense attorneys and go, who are you? How can you like defend criminals and stuff like that? How can you defend OJ? And like, what I always looked at it differently. Whenever I heard people saying like, oh, defense attorneys are the worst, I always looked at it differently. Like, yes, there are some shitty, horrible human beings in the world, right? That are really, really terrible. But my thing is, they're going to ultimately get theirs. It's going to happen. So a lot of times I think defense attorneys are just trying to like, you know, soften the blow of what is an ultimate outcome, right? But what I think what's magical about defense attorneys is good people do bad shit all the time. You know, really good people get in bad situations and make bad decisions and fucking hurt people. And if just given another shot, wouldn't otherwise do it again. They don't got to go to jail to learn, right? Is that kind of the way you view this?
I mean, yeah, it's that the important thing is to look at the individual, and a lot of the times, the way the system is set up, it creates prisoners of their own backgrounds out of these people for the rest of their lives.
Right.
And we talked about that earlier. Employment applications. You want to apply for insurance. You want to apply for all these things. And now it's a digital network. And so all your footprints, anytime you're processed in the government, it's everywhere now. And it lasts forever. Even if a court order expunges your record, guess what? Those local newspapers, when you get arrested, publish the article on the internet, and it never disappears.
Well, what's fucked up about that is when you finish your term, right? Like your jail term. I got 5 years, right? I do my time. When you walk out, it's supposed to be you paid for your crime. No. You pay for the rest of your life.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's like, that's the truth of it. It's like, well, why the fuck? You know, is it like that? Why is that on your record? It should be, I paid for my crime. You know what I mean? It should be, and it's not. And that's the reason why we have repeat habitual offenders, because especially if you were like a drug dealer, or if you went in for stealing or something like that, and because you couldn't, or having a hard time making it in this world, now try to go out there as a convict.
Dude,
you know what I mean? It's like, go try to get hired, you know?
My touch on that was very simple. It was like I had 3 speeding tickets. I think it was within a month, right?
Yeah.
And the next one, you lose your license. So I had to go to a speeding class. It was mandatory after this. And it was almost like the Breakfast Club, you know, where everybody comes in on Saturday. That's what I was imagining this like. And it was kind of like that. But this time around, a cop didn't teach it. A lot of times they just bring cops in. They show guys going 80 miles an hour into a wall. This can happen to you. And there was this Jewish psychologist that taught it. He opened up my mind to so many things. Because, you know, as he's going around going, so, you know, why do you speed? I like going fast, you know, some dude, you know, and he's like, okay, the thrill of speed, I get it.
I like going fast.
And then, what about you? You know, and he got around to me, and I go, you know what? And this is the time when I was working with D Films, and we were trying to do our stuff.
What he's referencing is Justin had a production company he worked for, and we kind of had mutual business, and he kind of brought me in on it. So any given day, you would have our workload, and then their workload.
Right.
And our workload is at your home office versus their workload, which is in the studio. So yeah, you're busting ass to get home, basically.
And this psychologist basically said, you know, it sounds like to me you have a time management issue. If you know,
you should go to jail.
No, he just explained it in such a way that anyway, you get on the wrong side of the law, you're screwed. And I've been trying to tell my son that, who had his own run-ins, you know? It's just not a good place to be.
And the question I'm about to ask you is the question I have wanted to ask so fucking long for an attorney, okay? Yeah. And this question comes from watching the documentary series Making a Murder on Netflix. Are you somewhat familiar with this case?
Yeah.
Okay.
I've watched some of the shows. I think, you know, here and there I'm studying too other cases, and I got it running in the background, but I've kept up on it. I've watched it, and it's just the most bizarre thing I've ever seen.
Basically,
I mean,
look,
it really
for those
is.
of you that don't know, this is like the you know, the big Netflix series, you know, of the year. This was like their big home run. It really, you know, got a nation of people locked into this story, where this guy, Steve Avery, was initially, basically, it was an attempted rape and murder, and a girl picked him out of a lineup, and whoosh, off he went to jail and did 18 years. And they eventually got him out. And what was it, DNA that they got him out the first time, Justin? Do you remember how they got him out?
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, it was DNA. Yeah.
There were other things that basically pointed the fact he didn't do it, but that's
Sure,
what
well,
100%.
starting with the fact that he was in another location completely away with, 18 witnesses to vouch for where he was. And yeah, he had never met this girl either, you know what I mean? And the guy that they actually did it, oddly enough, looked just fucking like him. Really weird kind of story. But this guy gets out, okay? He gets out of jail, and he's pissed, rightfully so. He gave 18 years of his life to this system, and they basically find out that a few years after he went in, there was all kinds of compelling evidence, and there was a couple people and police that were pointing around. Basically, they kind of figured it out early on. He probably didn't do this. This guy's in jail. He probably didn't do this. And the cops were like, cool. Shh. Keep it moving. You know what I mean? And the family was like, no. And they kept fighting. And, they eventually got him out. So he's now suing. He has like the governors behind him, and he gets a judgment. And it's looking like he's going to get something like $33 million is going to be coming down the pipeline. And then out of the blue, there's this girl that works for Auto Trader. Shows up to his place, goes missing, and like the next day, the cops show up and crazy shit, find her vehicle on his property, blood on the keys, on the door, and here again, this guy is swept up right away again, and also his nephew, Brandon Dassey, they go to the school with his nephew, who they later determine has the IQ of a slow person. I hate to use the R word. You know what I'm talking about here? Yeah. But yeah, he's really, really slow. And
he's got the innocence gene in a sense. That's what we like to call it. Because most people with low functioning IQs can't make any malice, and they're generally not bad people. So I think, rather than use the R word, just call them the innocence gene, because these people can really do no harm in the world.
Yeah, this kid's basically, sitting here and just kind of like, I just want to go home. You know what I mean? What do I have to say? To these cops. And the cops are telling him what to say. Didn't you see this? No. Yeah, you did, right? Okay, yeah.
And then they got to the point where they're like,
see this? Yeah.
Like,
you know what I mean?
We can't help you if you don't tell us that you did
it.
They
said that, right. And then after he confesses to all this, he's so detached from reality. He's like, why be home in time for after gym class today? Why be home? And he's not even getting the fact that, motherfucker, you're going to jail for life. I mean, he has no clue. You know what I mean?
I mean, I guess he admitted to brutally murdering and participating in something straight out of a horror film.
Oh, God. He said he walked in and, the cops told him, basically, you saw Avery. He invited you into a motorhome where a girl was chain or roped to the bed naked, in which he said, fuck her, do it, yeah, have fun and all this stuff. And supposedly he did, and there are things that didn't even make sense, because he was like, wasn't there something weird about her? And he's going, no, yes. And they're going, yeah, right. So what was it that was strange about her? Was there something wrong with the part of her? Yes. Which part? Her stomach? No, it wouldn't be her stomach, right? It'd be something. It's basically what they were trying to get at is saying that he said there's something wrong with her head, right? And he starts going, he knows what they're after now. He's like, yeah, he cut her throat with a knife. And he's going, no, he wouldn't have done that, right? Because there wasn't any blood, right? Oh, right. Oh, no, that's right. It was a gun. This is all on tape, right? It's all on film. It's you fucking loser. My question to you, and I've always wanted to ask an attorney this, why does it take so fucking long when they're wrong? When they're wrong, why does it take so fucking long to get people out?
Well, part of the process is once you have a judgment, it's very difficult to get it undone, in a sense.
That's what I mean. Why?
It's just because once you have a jury that decided the issue, unless there's some serious error, most of the judgments are affirmed when they're up on appeal. And then a lot of people think you have this Supreme Court, a third resort or a fourth resort to the United States Supreme Court, because it's a multi-tier system. So say a guy gets convicted in the trial court, which is the lowest level.
Right.
Then you would take an appeal and say, well, this is wrong. Or you would file a motion saying, well, here's new evidence we found, right? The problems become that when you get to the appellate level, if there's not a substantial error or significant, they're going to affirm it, right? And then you think you have this constitutional right to be heard in the Supreme Court, but the Supreme Court is usually discretionary. And as we know, the state and United States Supreme Court only take a few amount of cases.
What do you mean by discretionary? There's that? They're selective?
Right. They're selective in what they take, and there's some provisions. For example, in Illinois, if a trial court holds a statute unconstitutional, then it mandatory the Supreme Court of Illinois has to hear it. Okay? But the rest of them are discretionary. Does the Supreme Court want to hear it? And more or less, they created these avoidance rules. And part of the reason, there was a decision written in like 1843 in re-something Peru Republic, and they explained the reason why the Supreme Court decides what the reasons when they take a case. And what they said is, we, as a Supreme Court, have the most important things committed to us, right? The most important decisions that affect the entire nation.
Right.
And in order to have good decisions, we have to have fresh discourse, fresh study, and a fresh mind to make luminous opinions and all these other things that are necessary to make a decision that's proper, one that was discussed with other judges, and to go through this. And so to preserve that time, because a lot of people think you just read the record or the paperwork file. No, these judges have to go back and look at the history of where this came from, where this issue came from. And it takes a lot of time, and they cannot manage a big docket. So they selectively choose.
Really selective.
Right. And the bases are this. Like, for example, Justice Scalia wrote an opinion about all the avoidance rules, right, for why the Supreme Court avoids decisions. It's got to be a real adversarial dispute. So if it's two companies, they don't usually take it. But if it's maybe Samsung and Apple disputing something about a patent that affects other companies, may, affect it. But it's got to be something that has a global application to the world. This little scrimmages between, Jim and Bob, it's not important.
They're there for the big game shit, right? The big deal. They're the Super Bowl of the courtrooms,
and
right?
And a good example is, and I'll tell you, this is a good example. There was a judge that was a state court judge, and he would hear murders, rapes, armed robberies, all these violent things that me and you and the rest of society think are heavy, heavy, serious cases. I mean, they're serious things. And then he became a federal judge, and he says, I used to think I heard important cases. Now I hear the most important cases, like, can a girl play on the boys' soccer team? Does she have to wear this uniform? Are transgendered bathrooms there? And the issues change. And so when you get to that level of Supreme Court, your issue has to fit basically in two things. One, it's never been decided before. And two, there has to be a split amongst the circuits or the high state courts where they all disagree.
Do you think it's Supreme Court worthy when Steve Avery was going to sue the police? So it's basically an attack against the system.
The thing is, he got a judgment. Like, it was coming.
The odd part is he did have the governor. All these people were on his side.
Yeah.
The media, everything. Right. The minute those cops. And from my point, planted him on new stuff.
On the second time around,
everybody pulled away.
Well, here's the thing. I mean, we all know how our politicians operate. When it's convenient for them, they'll get up there and they'll aid, and when it's not convenient for them, they'll hide. Out. And so, in the initial stages of his case, they weren't there in the first place. These are fair weather friends that come around for the sound bites and to look good, and they know they screwed up, so now they look like, oh, we're good with justice and these other things. But at the end of the day, you guys convicted an innocent man, took a tremendous amount of years, not just from him, but his family, his friends, the loved ones that he has. He lost all of that. I mean, he lost everything. And the other part is to lose your freedom and to take a guy who didn't kill somebody and put him in a cage with animals. Because listen, he's not doing like a 1-year bid or a 2-year bid with guys that are, just trying to do their time and get out. Right. He's doing a bid with guys that are not going to see the rest of the day and don't really care. And they understand that. Yeah. And to take somebody who's innocent and put him with all these murderers and rapists in and of itself was bad. But these politicians, what do you want them to do? Stick around and risk their career? No, they don't want to do that. This is Avery. In 2 years, we're going to forget about Avery. The only difference is Avery got a Netflix thing, so no one's going to forget about him. And it's probably the most bizarre case I've never heard of something like this. And it reminds me, with the DNA that you talked about.
Yeah.
It reminds me of a case that we had in Illinois where the guy was convicted of a rape and a murder. And Juan Rivera was his name. I believe it was Juan Rivera. So this guy gets convicted, does a tremendous amount of years, and then he's exonerated by these groups. There's like these Project Innocence, the Bloom Legal Clinic out of Northwestern. You have these guys that go around and they hear these cases and do DNA screenings. And that goes back to what you were asking. Why does it take so long? And so this Juan Rivera guy eventually, after years and years of petitioning and going through, it's hard. First of all, when these guys hit the joint, they have no money. And lawyers need money. And public defenders, once you're convicted, your right to a public defender is gone in a sense.
Yeah.
And your post-conviction rights are not really administered because not all people say that you have a constitutional right to a lawyer in post-conviction proceedings to undo it. The other part is if you take a look at these guys that are usually convicted, they're not rich guys. They're like poor guys who really didn't have the support system needed to try to defend themselves. Or sometimes just got railroaded in the sense that the whole trial went wrong. Something went wrong.
That's the thing with Avery, too. It's not like he's an angel. He has a checkered past. This guy's done some whack shit.
Well,
he's on record as pulling a gun out before and pointing at his mother-in-law. But there's nothing in his record that says he's some psychotic killer. The thing about it doesn't make any sense is, listen, you just got out on an amazing case, that took 18 years of your life. You have a check coming for $30 million. Are you going to decide to rape and kill the auto trader girl with your fucking nephew? This makes no sense. So the question becomes, is it possible that a bunch of just hillbilly redneck motherfuckers got together and said, hey, listen, by the way, he hired a massive legal team, which he's now going to have the funds for, to say, I want to, dig up all the dirty cops, all the dirty, the courthouse. You know what I mean?
Right.
There's dirt in the system. I got 31 million. I'm going to go get so they don't want that to happen. So what it appears as though, right? It appears as though that they all got together and just said, we need to send this motherfucker back to the can, because if he's indicted, he couldn't get that 31 million, right? Now they were like, okay, well, we can't pay this for you. So he negotiated reduced down to 300,000, which he had to take because he had to pay his lawyer fees to try to get him out now.
Not only that, they supposedly kill her, and then where? Oh, we got her car. What do we do? Let's put it in the backyard.
Well, well, hang on a second. Going back, what I was telling you about Juan Rivera, this is an interesting one because it's almost the same. It sounds like it's the same. So I don't know why they did this, but Juan Rivera was convicted based on DNA on the shoes. Sometime later, they showed that those shoes weren't for sale to the public. They weren't even made yet to be sold at the time of the murder. And that the shoes, when they were examined, had semen stains, DNA from the girl's body that matched somebody else, right, on the shoe. Right. So the question is, if the shoe didn't exist at the time of the body, at the time that the murder happened, and the shoe was released time and time later, right. How did the semen and the blood get there? Because the shoe, you understand? The only way it could get there was because the police played games. And here, you have the same type of scenario because they had access to the blood, if you look at it from the first case. Right. And they showed it. They showed how you can easily puncture it. And they even showed that there was a test. And they asked the guy, why would you test it? Why would you test it again when you already know what it's there? Why is this punctured? And
are you talking about the blood thing? It was crazy. So they opened it up and it's like, dunk, someone dipped it.
So this is from the car that was in the back lot of the Avery, plant or foundation or whatever they were at. Yeah. And the blood that was found all over her car, they thought, I think his defense pointed the fact that this could be found if they had his blood from the last time. Like, okay, let's check it. They brought him in. They opened up the tape, and there are puncture holes in the blood.
You can see his attorney at that time just going,
we got it.
Yeah, basically it's just like he's just looking at it like, you can't make this shit up. You know what I mean? Like, wow.
Not only that, the area in which this murder happened was not in the same district or county, I guess, as the place where he was suing, right?
Yeah, that's the crazy part. Do you think as an attorney, like, the judgment to get $31 million, basically his judgment said, you guys illegally convicted me to the degree of conspiracy. Okay, so that's what he's trying to show. Now, because of that, the state official claimed, I did not have those county guys go anywhere near this investigation. And then they find out not only did he have them go near, the first responders were them. They went in, shut the doors, and locked them, and could do whatever they want. And like you said, they just happened to find, after sweeping his bedroom over and over again 3 times, they found nothing. The guy that was pointed at and singled out as the dude that was probably the guy behind the first time he went to jail is left alone in the room in which he magically finds the bloody keys. And he's like, oh, I just moved this thing, and they fell on the ground.
Yeah.
And they're like, what the fuck? How you're an attorney? Like, how can they get away with this? Like, is it just that it's just due process just takes fucking a long time?
No.
Is that just all it is?
Because it was a conspiracy issue or an intentional wrongful conviction.
Right.
The city or the county wouldn't be able to pay the money that was there because their insurance or something
Big
wouldn't
time.
cover
That
it.
was
Right.
a huge issue, and that's what they were saying, that they felt like the conspiracy. That's motive. He's going to break. Not is he going to break the city financially, but he's going to go after judges, which have now, since the case 18 years later, they've been promoted up. Right? They're going up the ranks. And here's this guy that has potential mud to show corruption and all this shit. Have you seen in the court systems, have you seen this type of corruption before? Like where basically, I guess, where, heads of police chiefs are working with judges and sheriffs to just kind of like put people away when they want to?
Yeah.
Have you experienced this before?
Yeah. I
Wow.
had a case. It was called Operation Just Cause. Chicago did a Operation Just Cause to qualm the public. They said, all right, all the gangbangers, lock them up and take them off the street. Right? That's it. So whatever they do, put them in the tank, right?
Right.
So the police would start making these reckless conduct cases where they said the gang members were throwing gang signs in the street, and so pedestrians had to walk across the street, but they would never bring a pedestrian to court because it was garbage cases just to get these guys off the street. So some of these guys though were on parole or probation and were just walking down the street, and then they get violated because they picked up a new case and they're back in the system and now they're buried. And guess what? The numbers are good. Stats are good. The gangbangers are off the streets, so the shootings are down, whatever. So I get this case. It's 2 kids charged with the gang signs. And I believe them when they're telling me the story. Listen, and I went actually to the grocery store and talked with the people what they were doing. Police said that they were standing in front of a grocery store throwing Latin King signs, which, if anyone knows American Sign Language, it's the sign for I love you, right? So, problem is, though, gang members have constitutional rights because the Boy Scouts of America are no different than the Latin Kings,
Right.
in terms of association.
On paper, right.
Right.
Yeah.
You have the right to associate. You have this freedom to associate. And you have a freedom to communicate with signs such as I love you, respect. So, it turned out that when I did all the things, I asked the officer, why were these guys arrested pursuant to Operation Just Cause? What is Operation Just Cause? Well, it's a directive from the higher brass to arrest all the gang members and not show any discretionary enforcement. And all of a sudden, I kept seeing these same fact patterns over and over and over again. And, when you got like the guy, everyone's teamed up against you. We put it on the trial. I asked the officer, he tells, 10-year tactical time. I've been a 15-year gang training unit. And I asked the guy, okay, you said my clients were throwing gang signs, right? What were they wearing, short sleeves or long sleeves? Couldn't remember. What hands did they use? Oh, couldn't remember. Finally, I got him. I said, well, what sign did they throw up? And he threw up the pitchfork. That was Larry Hoover's gang. There was a guy that used to sell drugs called Gangster Disciples, right? Yeah. That is an African-American gang that is the rival of the Latin Kings. Latin King signs like this. When the judge saw it, whatever, we got it not guilty. We sued the city of Chicago. They cut us a check. Right? And we sued for the constitutional rights of their things. So I've seen this before in that pattern where they're working, that way. But more or less, the system does work. It does work. It is an honest system. It does work, and it is an honest system. But occasionally you get flaws because, again, you have juries, right? And juries can make a bad decision. Problem is, it's very difficult to undo those decisions.
Think about it. If this movie deal never came, he's rotten in it. You know what I mean? Like, fame is his key. That's his way out, the movie deal. So if the movie deal doesn't exist and the producers don't come, Stephen Avery's still in that first round of, you know what I mean?
Yeah, but is it Stephen Avery that's bringing the movies, Or is it that his case is so bizarre and unjust that it's creating an issue in and of itself for the people to see? It's not so much him.
That's true, yeah, because it basically it was. What happened was the whole thing started through that. What's that? You would know the name of the group. They're the group that basically fights to get things overturned.
It's usually Project Innocence.
Well, the whole Avery making the murder was produced by those two women, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And I would think, did they have an affiliation with this group they were talking about?
Who, the Innocence Project?
Yeah.
No, absolutely.
Oh, okay.
Oh, yeah.
So that,
well, but not in the sense that, like, we're getting you money and we're doing whatever. Like, in the sense that there are obviously filmmakers that believe in finding the truth in cases like this. And so they got involved, and the whole time they're in contact with the Innocence Project because they need them, right? Like, a lot of the resources come from their attorneys, come from them. The DNA testing comes from them. You know what I mean? They have to get them involved. You know, so yeah. I mean, they were involved with them, but not. I don't believe like directly, meaning like my wagon is hitched to yours firmly. I think it's by association.
well, I mean, obviously they had a lot of stick-to-itiveness, man. That took a long damn time. Just imagine.
10 years. 10 years.
That's how long they shot?
Yes.
Oh my
10
God.
years.
It's a travesty. And the other thing is, you got to remember, we have an increase in population. We have an increase in cases, but the system remains the same. I mean, we have the same amount of judges, same courthouses, so it's hard to also keep up with all these petitions. I mean, we went from an era of mass incarceration from the 80s till about now, where everyone was tough on crime, and now everyone can see the result of being tough on crime, right? President Obama just commuted a ton of sentences, let a lot of guys out.
1,600.
Yeah, 1,600 or something, right. And the cost of housing these individuals is unbelievable. So we've gone to an era where we're changing, but this problem still remains is you got a bunch of guys claiming they're innocent. Project Innocence will come out there, do the DNAs, do their little screening, and make sure that they're dealing with somebody who they believe is actually innocent. And then you have to get money for the DNA testing. You have to get investigators. You have to get all these things. And a man who's in a box, separated from the world with no resources, has no ability to access what he needs to prove his innocence. So it's either you get lucky, that the Project Innocence or somebody came to your aid, a benevolent nonprofit,
right,
or you sit there and rot or fight it pro se. And usually these guys, when they do it pro se, they can't win because they can't gather evidence. They can't get the tools they need, and they're not learned scholars.
Are you typically a defender or a prosecutor?
It depends. If I'm going against the government and I want to fix something, then I'm prosecuting on behalf of the people, right? In a sense, but not
Right.
appointed like a prosecutor or whatever. But my goal, like the class action we did against the tickets in the 7th Circuit and in the Northern District. When we challenge the city, we're doing it not only on behalf of our client, but we're doing it on behalf of the city. So there, I'm attacking the government, and I'm saying that the government, the Constitution is a restraint on the government. It's
Right.
a ball and chain on the government. It keeps them in place. It's not a chain on human beings. It tells what the government can and can't do. In fact, the only amendment that affects somebody is the 13th Amendment. It says that you can't have slaves. Everything else is limited to the government. So my job when I attack the government is as a prosecutor. But when the government or someone's attacking my client, at that point I'm a defender. But usually you have to take a proactive step anyways because, realistically, justice is not like freely dispensed. Sometimes it has to be exacted.
This next case up on the docket, we don't believe justice was expensed. So you need to put your prosecutor hat on here and look at the evidence and.
Okay, so we all know Mr. Kurt Cobain. Okay, really interesting. The world mourned when out of the blue it came out that Kurt Cobain had committed suicide, and supposedly he had committed suicide with a shotgun that he blew his head off. Well, as the story goes, it's like a PI, private investigator, right, which is a civilian, right, civilian position. So he was hired by Courtney Love in the beginning. So basically, Kurt had went missing, and he was with her from the beginning all the way up until well after, Kurt had passed away, and he made a documentary called Soaked in Bleach, which this, by the way, is going to double as our movie review section for the night, everybody that's listening, because I can tell you right now, if you haven't seen Soaked in Bleach, you have to. It is an unbelievable documentary. It is done really, really well, and it is from the viewpoint and the perspective of this private investigator. Here's the bizarre things about Kurt Cobain. He had just left rehab, okay? So he was clean. He was completely clean, and he and Courtney were on Splitsville. He absolutely wanted to get a divorce, and more importantly, they have a daughter together, Frances Bean. He wanted to get Frances. It is rumored that he called her, which they know he made a phone call from the rehab facility to basically say, I'm out and I'm coming to get my daughter. Okay, this is the last direct conversation that she had with him. The things about the case that are really, really weird, let's start with the suicide note. The first half of the note is not a suicide note. Then nowhere does he mention killing himself. Nowhere does he even broach that time. It was a retirement note. Like I'm getting out of music. Like I don't feel the connection anymore. I feel like I'm doing it for money. Like that type of shit. Then at the very end of the letter, you see the handwriting kind of fade off, and then it starts up again. And now it's kind of big, blocky, cursive-style writing that does not appear to be his. So they've done handwriting analysis that have determined it's not his handwriting, okay? This is being done by the PI, by the way. He's the one that's actually, getting people involved to figure this out, right? So, because at the end of the day, he's supposed to return and basically tell Courtney, this is what I think, right? So he's getting more and more frustrated because Courtney is just not wanting to give him certain documents, and he's asking for things about the will, right? Can I see the will? Can I see what's going on? Why are you so...
This is all in Soaked in Bleach?
It's all in Soaked in Bleach. All in Soaked in Bleach, yeah. I mean, what he determines is that, she absolutely knew that, he was coming for Frances Bean. She was looking for a way to get out of that marriage and not lose fucking everything. And she talked about this. Listen, Courtney Love is somebody today because she's the widow of Kurt Cobain. Without Kurt Cobain, Courtney Love is fucking nobody, okay?
Right, it's like a parasitic fan.
Yeah, right? You're a fucking nobody, She knew this. So, now remember, this was also the second documentary written about her doing this. The first one came from a friend of mine, legendary documentarian Nick Broomfield, where I'm going to do my best to get Nick on this show. Nick, in his documentary, he had hitmen that Courtney had met that had offered them up to $50,000 to just whack him. That he interviewed there. So she had been up to this for a while, you know what I mean? But what they also discover in Soaked in Bleach is the amount of heroin Kurt had in his body was literally enough to kill a fucking water buffalo. I mean, it was like an ungodly amount. I think they say the actual amount. It was, I want to say it was like 1,000 milligrams. Even hardcore heroin junkies would be like, yo, that's too much. The reason that people, turn to narcotics to commit suicide is it's actually a very comfortable death. What happens is your body just slowly shuts down. Your breathing slowly becomes suppressed, slower. You fall asleep, and then finally you just stop breathing. That's it. So, they find out that his body had a ton of narcotics in it, which, again, begs the ultimate question. If you're going to kill yourself that way, if you're going to kill yourself by shooting heroin, what's with the fucking gun? What's with the shotgun, which is what it was? What's with the shotgun supposedly to the face? That's crazy, right? Why would you do that?
I mean, it's like a guy who gets in the garage and turns on his car, doesn't open it, but then blows his brains out with a gun while he's sitting waiting for the gas to kill him. It doesn't make any sense, right. And that's you're right. And the other thing is, one interesting thing is he loves his daughter.
Yeah.
This is not a guy. This is not a guy who's facing a federal indictment, and wants to kill himself because he needs to save his pension for his family. Like a public official who's about to get charged with corruption has to, if he gets charged while he's in office, his wife loses benefits and all those other things. So he kills himself as a martyr, so the family gets the benefits and he's never convicted. Right. That's understandable. But in this case, the guy has everything going for him. Right. Why would he kill himself? He has a daughter. He loves his daughter. Even in his letter, he writes how much he loves his daughter.
Yeah. So why? And here's the thing too. Look, I'll say it, and we'll talk about it more on PARAMERICAN Radio in the future. I've been through rehab. Trust me, man. when you're clean and you're coming out, oh my God. I mean, you feel so... You're ready to make amends. You feel so good that you're alive and you're healthy again, and you're like, holy shit, what happened? I barely escaped death. But you have this need to just make amends with all the people that love you, right? You just have this desire to show them, look, I can do that. You know what I mean? I'm good.
Yeah.
So he's going to, come out of, you know what I mean? After going through all this, and granted, again, heroin was his drug of choice, you know what I mean? Which, if you know anything about narcotics, they're the worst. They're the fucking worst. Withdrawals kill motherfuckers, man. Opiates are just devastating drugs, you know?
You take one opiate, your mind's not the same for 18 months, they say. It alters your neurons for about 18 months.
Absolutely. And I remember this guy's doing rock star opiates, right? A ridiculous amount he's pouring on his brain all the time. The war that he would must have gone through to get clean. I mean, you know what I mean?
Yeah, he's a rock star, so he probably parties a lot harder than the average guy.
Right.
Which then results in him, what is it? You get, we have tons of, I'm from Chicago, and we're like the heroin capital of the country in a sense, and we got all these guys dying from fentanyl and all sorts of things mixed with the drugs.
Fentanyl and carfentanil and all the opiates,
But growing up, I had a childhood friend who's a heroin addict, and when he went through his withdrawals, he's shitting his pants. It's unbelievable.
I've never done heroin. Mine was a classic case of American fucking pharmaceutical. My doctor was my dealer. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I didn't even know till I was too deep. And now I'm too deep, you know what I mean? And that's how it was. And I have a lot of great stories I could tell people on this show, but when it comes to that one, I'm as ordinary and average as a million other people who fell for it. You know what I mean?
Judges.
It just is what it is.
Lawyers get injured, judges get injured like that.
Sure.
They get a back surgery, they get some Oxycontin, and the next thing you know, their physical makeup is not strong enough to overcome the opiates. The doctors, and then the other thing is, it's not so much sometimes the doctors. The patients are lying to their doctor about paying to get more drugs. And
if you understood the way it works, you understand why they're lying, because they didn't know. They didn't know what it was until it got them.
Right.
And now they're like, fuck, I'm trapped. And most people don't know this, that drug addicts, they don't want to be addicts. They don't want to take another pill. They are fucking terrified of this monster called withdrawals.
Oh, it's the
and
worst.
until you've ever experienced it, trust me, you don't know what the fuck you're talking about when you're just like, oh, so you get sick, get over it. You don't know what the fuck you're talking about unless you've experienced it. Yeah, so that is why people stay junkies. So if you can beat that, and this is my point relating to Kurt, if you can find a way to overcome that fucking monster that shuts down what people don't realize, your body naturally right now, you have your brain is making endorphins that calm, block, and manage your pain, right?
Dopamines and all sorts
Absolutely.
of
There's a regular amount that your body naturally makes. You introduce the pills, or in his case, the worst, the shooting it, right? Your body goes, oh, cool, you got this. I'm going to chill. And it just shuts down.
Right.
So now it's waiting for you to reintroduce it. So the problem now comes when you stop and you don't give it, your brain's going, okay, start making those endorphins. Hey, endorphins. Hey, and what the fuck? Endorphins, you know what I mean? Your mind's going crazy, and it doesn't make it. So now every fucking joint you have, which is quite a few in your body, is on fire, raging fire. Your mind chemically is trying to balance, which is why you get the shits and you puke and all that stuff. It's just the worst fucking thing imaginable. There's nothing like it on earth. I've never been lit on fire, but I'm guessing this is similar. Light me on fire, probably what it feels like. There's no fucking way you overcome that. And 2 days later, I'm just gonna not find my daughter. That I'm, you know what I mean, that I'm calling out from the hospital. I'm going to not find her. I'm going to go to this room I've never been in. I'm going to tell my fans I retire? What?
Well, what's the statute of limitations on this? I mean, you can't go back and
here's
do
what's
anything.
crazy.
On a murder?
Yeah.
Here's what's crazy.
There's no statute of limitations on a murder.
So they could go back, and if you could find evidence...
No, here's what's crazy. All the evidence is there, and there's way more. The police basically fucked and botched the whole thing up, and they said Kurt was barricaded in there. That's a lie. I mean, basically a reporter showed up, and the cops let him in, and he made this fantastic story of all these things that just aren't true, that people have ran with, and they have shitloads of film that's been rolled and taken that is the police took it, and Kurt also took it with his own camera, and the police have. So this PI, he was like saying, can I see the footage, the film that you took there, because there's a couple pieces that he thinks will prove Courtney did it, and the police department is like, nah, we never even got those. There was old school film. They never got him exposed, and he's like, huh? So you have rolls of film from there that you never even got exposed. They're like, it was a suicide. We just let it roll as a suicide. And they're going, no, guys, it wasn't. And we have all that stuff. We need to see, the film. And their whole stance is, the cops are, go home. It's over. It's over. You know what I mean? It's it.
And you could, here's the thing. Okay, fine. Let's talk about the evidence you just said.
Yeah.
All right. One of the things that I think that wasn't mentioned was that the shotgun shell, when he shot it, was on the
wrong
opposite.
direction.
Was on the wrong direction.
If you flip
in the
the
report.
guitar around, or the guitar. If you flip the shotgun around, the side in which the shell gets expended out the gun. It's one of their. I want to say it's supposed to go to the right, and it's way. It was found way to his left. So they're saying, oh well, it must have jumped out of the gun, hit the ground, cracked into his pack of cigarettes or his wallet, bounced up over his body, and landed right next to. You know what I mean? It was just
like a Rube Goldberg machine.
Yeah, it was like the magic fucking bullet,
up?
right? Yeah, all over again. It was like everybody's like, it didn't fucking happen. This is bullshit. You know what I mean? So it just shows that somebody executed him in there.
Well, that's and you answered the question why the police probably won't touch it. So one of the things is to reopen a case like that, you need standing in a sense. And we had one of those in Illinois where the lotto winner, the husband won the lotto and the wife poisoned him. There was enough evidence showed they exhumed the body. Okay.
Yeah.
And they found that he was poisoned with the arsenic, whatever. Problem is, you can't put it, there's no person to put behind the trigger. So you can't, all right, what do you have? You have a gun, you have a letter, the other signature.
Check this out too. No, hold on. Here's something crazy. And tell me what you think about this as an attorney. If you would not charge her, was there something with her? You know what Courtney did with the gun? Courtney, because the gun is now hers, because he's died. She's the wife. In less than 3 days after Kurt was found, within 72 hours, she had the gun melted. She had the gun melted into scrap iron and sold.
Right, and that's what I'm saying. You can't do a forensics on the weapon now. You don't have any fingerprints on the weapon. You have a guy filled with heroin who has a history of heroin, right? You have a letter that's written. Okay, you got 2 different types of signatures on it, right?
Yeah.
Or different styles of handwriting. But I don't think there was confirmation whose handwriting it was. They're saying that it's different, but they can't ID the person.
No, but the funny thing is they think they know, but the girl won't submit. It was, I believe, God, if I'm wrong, audience, don't kill me because it's been a while since I've seen this. It's one of their mutual, drug interest friends.
Right.
Because what happened was, Courtney, because she had the cash, right, from Papa Cobain had some ducats. So she had all her little heroin friends, right? And that's how that culture works. When you're the whoever has access, that's God. You know what I mean?
Right.
So she's like God to those dudes. So she has all her little people, her minions, that will do whatever the fuck she tells people to do, for their coke fix. And this letter, they took this person's handwriting. They had an example of it.
Heroin fix, right?
What's that? Heroin fix. I'm saying. What did I say?
Coke.
Oh, heroin fix. Sorry. They took this other sample of this person's handwriting, and they pretty much know who wrote it, right? But the person won't come forward. See, the thing is, it's like, the reason this is not being tried, and why, at least what I thought after I thought about it at the end, is like, why are people not going after Courtney Love? It's kind of like you said, is who would go after her?
The only person that can go after it is her daughter, daughter, or the granddaughter, if the daughter has a daughter. And the reason why is, there's laws generally saying when a spouse kills another spouse, they can't inherit anything by law. So it's a survivor statute in a sense. And so if she was found guilty of murder, she would be excluded from the will, and everything would go to the daughter, right? And she couldn't manage the funds as a guardian for the daughter because, no court would allow that to happen.
So really the only person that could actually go after her is Frances Bean.
Correct.
Who is deeply in love with her mother and believes everything her mother says.
Until someday she finds a smoking gun and changes her mind. Or a granddaughter comes along and says, I don't agree with this.
They just made, in response to Soaked in Bleach, Frances Bean was angry about it, and she made hers another tell-all documentary about Nirvana that she produced. And they came out same week.
I saw it. So, is that what was that one called?
Something, Montage of Heck.
Yeah.
Yeah, that Frances Bean made, and she basically did it to just throw fog on Soaked in Bleach. Like, she can make more headlines.
Well, yeah, I mean,
that's Frances Bean. There's two stories, right? That nobody PI, that nobody fucking knows. That has this brilliant documentary that's on the indie company, or Frances Bean making a documentary about her mom and about her dad and releasing new music from Nirvana.
I wonder how she thinks
Soaked in
about
Bleach
that.
went away.
So in her documentary, there's that scene with them in the the tub, both naked, just fucking out of their minds.
And her mom,
heroin
going nuts.
out. With Frances, a baby, going, oh.
She must not care, because you know what? In Montage of Heck, they're interviewing Courtney, and they're like, so what was, did you ever worry about Fran? And she goes, you're talking about drugs, right? Yes, I did heroin. I did a lot of heroin when I was pregnant with Frances, but I knew she was going to be fine. I knew it. I told people she was going to be fine, and she was fine.
And that's the one thing. That's going back to what you just said, is an interesting thing. Kurt got clean, right?
Kurt got clean?
Okay. Kurt got clean on behalf of his daughter.
Yes.
Right? That's the basis. Would we agree with that?
Yes. Yeah. This is the fact. We
now,
know
here's
this.
The interesting
he went
part
to rehab,
about it.
Completed it. Yes.
You have a woman, who has the daughter in the womb, who couldn't get clean for her own daughter. You're right. A guy who cleans himself up, or a gal who cleans herself up out of the rehab, is like a Mack truck ready to go. And they have no room to slow down. Like, they're ready to go and conquer the world because they just got this monkey off their back.
You lost time, and you're like, oh, I got to get it back now.
Yeah, they're back. They're back.
And
from
you
the
just
death.
feel, for the first time, you feel fucking good. Your emotions are now on.
Right.
You know what I mean?
And a guy who's clean probably wants to stay away from the dirty wife who's doing the dope, right? Because he's been clean.
Of course.
So what is his goal? He's got all the money in the world. He's got all the fame in the world. Basically, the guy has everything that the average, guy would dream about, and he's got it in abundance. Not just a little bit of it. He's got it all. He's got looks. He's got brains. He's got everything going for him. He's got the world at its fingertips, he's clean now, which makes him powerful and sober,
right? And on the flip side, you have
course.
you have Courtney clutching that heroin addiction with both hands, going, "This guy's coming at me."
Right.
He can
and the
take
fucked
this
up
away.
thing
He can
was-
take the
and
kid. He can
fucked
take
up
everything
thing
because
was-
he's capable of getting clean. I can't get clean even though I'm pregnant. I mean, what the fuck?
The fucked up thing was, what she didn't see is that he wasn't even going to try to, like, fuck her over or anything, you know what I mean? He was just like, my daughter's coming with me. But he still very much viewed her as, you're the mother, you know what I mean? But his plan was to try to get her into rehab. That's what he was trying to make happen. He was financing her whole life. He was paying for everything.
And that's
You know
the
what I
thing.
mean?
When he's gone, she doesn't have the money. She doesn't have all that opportunity. And the other part, she probably knows he has the ability to take this kid, his lawyers, the whole team, everything behind him, especially if he's sober.
Yeah.
So, but the main problem is the murder's weapon is missing. There's no basis to compel handwriting statements. Okay, fine. You got the guy who wrote the second and signed and forged, the order.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean he pulled the trigger. That doesn't mean he did anything. He
No.
might have done that just for media purposes to make it look better for Kurt and finished his letter for him. Right?
Here's
There's
the
no way to
scary
prove
part.
who pulled the trigger, who paid the money, who did this, you can't prove it anymore.
You can't prove any of it, but this is the really freaky, scary part about this whole thing. Kurt's in this private place where she said this is the place Kurt went to get away to write music and do all this stuff, right? I could see that. Kurt was kind of a reclusive type of dude. But in order to go to that place and approach him in that state and that comfortably, if she talked him into shooting up, which is possible, it just doesn't seem likely. But the only person I could imagine being able to get physically close to him at that time would be her, Courtney. You know what I mean? Who is he going to allow close to him from her whole circle of fucked up friends? You know what I mean? And everything. Like, she's the only one that I could see him allowing her to physically get in his presence.
Right, and sometimes even guys that get out of rehab, I've seen it lots of times. They get out, they go get high, and then they're right back in because they relapse immediately because they weren't ready yet.
Right.
They weren't ready yet.
Right.
They just
Sometimes it happens.
So it could have been she came, she grabbed him emotionally, and you know what? There's something. It's like, very few people come back from heroin. Very few people do. Those that do are like Superman, Iron Man. Those are very far and few between. And so
7% or something like that, yeah.
Whatever the percentage is, it's about the same that the Supreme Court takes cases, So the idea is that it's very rare, so he could have fallen in the same play, whatever. But at the end of the day, you can't open the case. You got to do it the way they did OJ. Okay, OJ lost his he won his criminal case, not guilty on the murder, right?
Right.
But they cracked him civilly, right?
Right.
Again, but it falls on the daughter. The daughter's not upset, so. Why would the police or anybody go ahead and open up the case?
So they don't have a murder weapon or any of that. Say there were other people involved that helped Courtney. What if they came forward?
If they came forward and said that Kurt Cobain was murdered and that we participated in it and we were paid and we were bribed and these things, there comes a problem. One, yes, that's enough evidence to open up a case,
it's
even
the
without the murder weapon.
Man.
There you go. It's the word of junkies.
No credibility.
Well, some junkies are honest, but at the end of the day, the law is set up against somebody.
Some of the most honest people I ever met in my life are addicts. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying, what I'm saying. In court of law, that's like, I will blow Swiss cheese through that.
Well, here's the problem with seasoned junkies. We're not dealing with like 16-year-old junkies or 18. We're dealing with seasoned junkies. And seasoned junkies tend to rack up a lot of mileage in the court system. Felonies, misdemeanors. And when they're out of money, they're stealing to get it. So when they come to court and they testify, what's the result? They get impeached because most of their crimes are moral turpitude crimes. Junkies don't kill people. They rob and steal, and they try to make it victimless as possible. They go into stores, they do things like that. So the junkies are always going to have crimes of moral turpitude as opposed to violent crimes. And if they're when have you seen a violent heroin addict? Realistically, the guy usually gets high, nods off, and listens to, whatever music, right? Yeah. So that's why I say that it doesn't make sense. Kurt Cobain was never a violent guy, from what I understand. No. And maybe he was violent in terms of his lyrics, like violent emotionally in that way, but the guy had a shotgun in a room and blew his brains out, and it doesn't make sense he would be alone in a room with a shotgun. In that little room. I could understand the shotgun in the bedroom or whatever, but a shotgun in that little attic room for what?
They just figured it's like past the point of like wonder. Scientifically, he couldn't have done it. The way you see the documentary, it breaks it down. It's like, and that's the thing that the PI. Have you seen this?
It's like a chicken flying.
I haven't seen that.
It's impossible.
Well, that's what I mean. Like, he's just kind of sitting around the whole time, just going, guys, like, listen, this isn't I'm not giving you opinion about shit. This couldn't have happened. You know what I mean? Look, thank you so much for your time and weighing in on this. I literally could talk to you all day long about these types of things. I would love to have you on again as a guest at Paramerican Radio. Did you come back and see us again?
Absolutely.
I have so many more things that I want to ask you, but I also want to ask you and I can record it and share it with all of you. Thanks for listening. Steve, Justin, thank you guys so much again. To the world at large, good night and goodbye. Say adios, everyone.
See ya.
I'll see ya.
Later.